Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we have a new tutorial series for Logic Pro. So we're in Logic 11.2, Logic Pro 11.2. And if you guys want to make trap beats and you want to make hip hop beats that sound modern, this video is for you. I'm an FL Studio user transforming over to Logic Pro, and I can tell you guys, it's so much fun once you understand the workflow. So let's hop straight into the workflow. So if you're a beginner, no worries, because I'm going to give you that simplified approach. Because again, I'm not a Logic expert. I'm still learning my way through the DAW for all the microscopic stuff. But firstly, what we want to do is get used to setting this BPM. So if you guys hit, I believe it's Command K, opens up your little typing window for your MIDI controller if you don't have one. Option K opens up this thing called the Keyman Center. So I watched a tutorial about this. Forgive me for not quoting the original source here. Forgive me, guy. But basically, you want to type in the word tap and click on where it says tap tempo. And under the key command, you're going to hit Shift Q. So basically, the way you activate tap tempo is you hit Shift Q. Once that's enabled, hit Shift Q. A message will pop up. It'll say like, do you want to accept this feature? And then when I hit Shift Q and I keep tapping the Q, it kind of changes the BPM. It changes the BPM to whatever I tap to. So I'm going to change it back to 96, but that's a good way to kind of get started. If you have samples or loops or something you need to time stretch real quick, that is a quick way to do that. All right, so I'm not going to go through all the technical stuff. Let's go through a real beat making process. So firstly, you need to up your sounds. We have a bunch of sounds on our Discord. Go to discord.gg/busyworksbeats. That we have over 120,000 members on our Discord. We're the fastest growing Discord in the world for music production. If you want, access to all my project files and my sounds, go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory to get those for free. Okay. So there's a library. You guys just need to spend a whole day or two and just look for sounds, drum breaks, drum kits, one-shot samples. Just go on the internet. It's analogous to me looking for YouTube thumbnail. They call them graphic assets. Those are the things and the objects in the picture. Think of those as like what you're collecting. Okay. So over time, you guys will get my go-to kit. I have this listed in my, again, if you go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory, all right, you'll get these sounds. So here we have an 808. So let's start with the 808 here. We're going to turn the metronome on now that we have our metronome. Let's grab the 808, drag it over here, and we're going to click where it says quick sampler optimized. All right, so we're not going to do anything to the sample right now. We're just going to X out of here. Now I'm assuming you have no MIDI controller, which is the thing that I could just play my keyboard here. And of course, it doesn't want to turn on. I got to return it on. But I can play my keyboard and trigger notes within the DAW. Okay, so I have a MIDI controller, which I can use. But I'm assuming you guys don't have that. So let me show you guys how I do my 808s. We're going to right-click here, create a MIDI region. These are analogous to patterns, okay? I'm not sure the difference actually between a pattern region. Okay, that's what okay, so a little crossover language, which is a little bit different than FL Studio. Anyhow, just right click, create a MIDI region. We're going to double click in here, and here we can draw in the notes for our 808. So what I recommend is you turn off all these screens because the piano roll needs to be as big as it can be for you guys. All right. So especially coming from FL. So I'm going to hit Control. So this button here, you can select your default thing that it's set to. So mine is set to a pointer because I just want to grab stuff by default. I don't want to draw stuff in by default. The secondary thing is when you hit Control and you left click. So that's how you switch between these two right here. You could select whatever your default thing is. For me, I record by hand a lot, so I just need to go in and select stuff, whereas you might need to draw stuff. So it's up to you how you guys set that up. No like right or wrong way to do it. But to activate this, you have to hit Control and then left click. So if I want to draw a note, for example, let's draw a note right here. And we're going to zoom in a little bit. Now, I keep my snap to grid on 1/16, and we're going to keep the metronome on. So I want to go dum, ch, dum, dum, dum. If you want a pattern, you guys can follow. It's called trecio. Trecio, 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 ta, 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 ta. And if I speed it up, you get the drill rhythm. Ta, 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 ta. That's called trecio. So what you guys can do if you're beginners is try the trecio pattern. Ta, 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 ta. Okay, and you can move it anywhere you want. So let's do boom, trecio. Okay, so, and let's hit Control. So the one thing coming from FL, you do have to get used to their grid system. It is a little bit different in the fact that when you change the snap to grid, it doesn't change the view. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Again, this is not me knowing everything about the DAW, so we're just going off of what we know. And then I'm gonna go done. Okay, so see how that wasn't really on time? Let's go back. All right, and I just want this to repeat. So let me show you guys how to quickly repeat. Let's get out the piano roll area and let's highlight this. So this only works when we have notes that perfectly line up to the bar. So if your thing goes like over by like even that much, this won't work. Okay, so be very, very, very careful when doing this. All right, so make sure that your stuff actually lines up to the bar. And then we're gonna hit Command R to copy and paste. All right, so that's the way I do my 808s. And I'm gonna turn up the 808 because it's a little quiet. So let's go back to these edit tools over here. Click on the sampler. And I'm gonna do stuff in the sampler itself. Like turn up the volume, about 6 dB. And now the 808 can hit a little harder. If you guys want your 808 to hit a little more much harder, turn on the filter and turn on the drive. That'll give it extra bite. All right, so let's say we want to loop this as we build our drums. Let's just click on the bar, or I believe, what's the shortcut here? Let me figure it out. Well, I guess my bar already exists, so figure out a way to do this bar. I think it's just Control click. All right, so I'm just gonna grab this and loop this for the entire 8 bars. Boom. Let's grab this side, go all the way back here. So let's hit Enter, go all the way back, hit spacebar for it to go. All right, so now we got our 808. A good habit to do is save. So go to File, Save As, or Save. And save this wherever you guys have on your computer. You can save it in your Logic folder under Music. I'd recommend you separate your folders though. Like here's how I'm saving mine. I'll go to File, Save As. I have a dedicated folder on my computer for projects labeled 2025 or whatever year you guys are watching. And then I'll create a subfolder for the actual day, 2025 June and then 3rd. I'll go in here and I'll create another subfolder with the project name. So keeping extreme organization as a beginner will help you in the long run because you'll be able to find stuff very easily. If you don't remain organized, you're going to lose stuff and you're going to hate yourself for doing it, like myself. All right, now let's draw some drums. Let's go back to our kit here. So we want some more drums. We want a hi-hat, we want a snare. So let's grab the hi-hat. Left click, drag it over here. Here, this time we're going to use the Drum Machine Designer. So I only use this when I want to organize different sounds, and I plan on using all these sounds in a sequence. Okay, so for example, the snare, anything not tonal. So the snare, the kick, the hi-hat, for example. Okay, so all we need is a hi-hat and a snare, which is what we have. So again, here's the sounds. And again, you have to find those online. Go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory to get this kit for free. All right, so now that we have these sounds, we're gonna click the sounds. Let's call this drum kit. And excuse me, guys, let's go to this little pencil tool up here and then go to where it says step sequencer. And I'm gonna show you guys some workflows that I copied from FL. So firstly, we need to figure out how to get they're both called the same thing, which is great. Now I got to rename these so I know what's what. All right, so one is the snare, one is the hi-hat, so I know what the heck these things are. Okay, so let's go back to the step sequencer. So now I know what's the hi-hat, what's the snare. All right, so in Logic, basically in FL Studio, there's this thing where you just right click and fill each 2 steps. I'm gonna show you guys how to do something similar in Logic. If you hit Command, Option, and left click, for example, I can hit Command Option and I can make this note longer. So basically Command Option, allows you to set the length of the note. What we're going to do is just select 2 of these. I keep my steps on 64 steps, so we have a lot of room to write our drums. So on the top right, you should see a Q. I'm not sure if my head's in the way. I can't see myself. But it says Q in the top right of the step sequencer, and it has a number of steps. We're going to change that to 64 steps. Again, hit Command and Alt in order to drag this note further. Now we can hit Command R to copy and paste this note all the way throughout our pattern. So now we get these steady hi-hats like this. Now we're at 96 BPM. All right, so we can go actually to this little drop down, I believe, and switch this to a smaller amount. So I'm going down here, switch it to 30 seconds. So I'm used to producing in double time. So let's see what this does at this smaller amount. Okay, so now I'm hitting Control Alt and making this note smaller. Okay, and then I'm going to click on this first note and hit Command R to copy and paste it all the way through. So now our hi-hat should be faster. No, that's too fast. Okay, so let's fix the length here. Command Alt, left click, drag, and hit Command R. So now we should be back. There we go. All right, so the question is, how do we continue this pattern? We got to go over here to the second tab and do that same exact thing. Click on that first note, hit Command R to copy and paste. Now, the one thing about FL that's different than Logic is that when you make a change in this pattern, it's not going to just make a change in the other pattern from default settings. Okay, so let's go back to this first tab and let's add in our snare. The snare usually goes on the 3 and the 7 count. Because we're at 96 BPM, we're not really in trap territory. So we're going to put the snare on the 2 and the 4. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Let's see what happens. There we go. So let's keep adding these snares. All right, so just count the metronome. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So that's where the snare goes in this case. Let's say you want to turn up the snare. We can go to the drop down here in the tracks list, and we could actually just go to the snare. I recommend to save the channel volume for if you really have to level when you're mixing your beat. I'd rather go to the sampler and turn up the volume from here. And just crank that volume. Now we have more aggressive drums. All right, so let's say we want to copy and paste this. Let's click this and hit Command R. Now, like I said earlier, if we make a change on this MIDI pattern or this MIDI region, I got to be careful with my words. This MIDI region, it will not affect this MIDI region by default. There probably is a way, but at least from default, this will be different. So let's say we want to make a hi-hat roll. Double click in here. And we'll pull up the step sequencer and then we can make a hi-hat roll. So let's make a hi-hat roll quickly by just clicking this drop down. We can go to the note repeat section here, and I love their note repeat section. It makes hi-hat rolls super easy. So let's say I want to go like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to left click here and just create rolls like that. Now that's too long of a roll, so it sounds cheesy, but. And you can change the timing per note. So it could go like that. So you can get really creative. And then also too, let's say you don't want all 8 of these notes. Here's where we're getting really advanced. You can click where it says note, switch this to gate. This is how long it triggers. And I believe we could turn the gate down so that, and anytime you mess up the numbers, hit Alt or Option and left click to reset. So we're going to turn the gate down so that I think it will only trigger. Let me see here. I might be wrong about this assumption here. It's still triggering, so maybe I'm incorrect about that because we're doing a roll. So I guess it considers each note per note gate. So never mind. Thought I was teaching y'all something secret, but it is what it is. Okay, so now we have rolls. So let's say we want to offset the hi-hat just a little bit. The old way is to go to your first pattern here, first region, click the drop down for the hi-hat, click here where it says note, switch this to what says where it says offset, and then you could use this global arrow to affect all of your notes. So let's click the up arrow here. This is only for this region. So let's turn it up like 4% just to offset the hi-hat off the grid so it's not super right on that grid. It adds a little more bounce. We can hear that bounce. So this even applies to the second half of this region. Okay, but we still have to apply it to the second region. I guess that's, I got to come up with a better name for these. So we can still apply it to the second region here. Okay, we have to go to the offset and pull this up 4%. So notice we had to do that manually. Again, it does not do that by default. So that's one habit you guys have to get in the habit of doing in Logic is if you make a change in this, it will not make a change in that. And that's a very big thing coming from FL. So now we're getting our drums. Let's pull some instruments up. Let me show you guys how to make your drums bang a little bit. So let's go to your drum kit, open up the inspector tab, click here where it says audio effects. And here is where we can add the effects. So click the audio effects. Let's go to where it says dynamics and open up the compressor. So the compressor here is the secret sauce. The secret sauce. So what we're going to do is turn up the threshold. So it says 0. We don't want the compressor to actually do anything. And we're going to turn the ratio to 1:1. So it's not doing anything. We're going to use, it's called the distortion mode here. And we're going to turn the input gain up for the drums. And then to compensate, we're going to turn down the output. And I'm going to turn the auto gain off. So now I can push the drums. Now keep in mind, we don't have a kick coming through here, so it's not much to actually saturate. This might be a little bit better demonstrated on the 808. So I already showed you guys how to get a bitey sound out of the drive. I'm going to turn that off temporarily just to show you guys how to get your 808 to hit or your kick. So go here, go to your compressor, go to stereo, turn the threshold to 0, turn the ratio to 1:1 so it's off, turn this auto gain off. And now we're going to switch the modes, either soft, hard, or clip. It just depends on your kick or your 808. We're going to turn up the input volume here, turn down the output, and then just keep cranking it. And then you'll hear that crunch. And then you can switch the modes for different styles of crunches. So I like the soft mode. So let's combine this with the drive. Go back to the sampler. Let's turn on this drive. See how that's too much saturation? Now it sounds boxy. So you got to be careful not to push your 808s too hard. So for now, we're going to leave that turned off. We're just going to click the little power button next to the compressor and just keep that off. So let's go back to our drum kit. See if we can push the snare. Now the hi-hats don't need more volume, but we could add a little more aggression to the snare. It's already really sound designed to be aggressive though. So now we're getting a little more scrapage out of it. But now the hi-hat's too loud. So let's go back to the drop down here, this little arrow, and just, you could fade it here, or I'd recommend you click on the hi-hat, go to the sampler, and turn down the volume within the sampler. So we're starting at the source. So our beat is pretty full already. So now let's talk about instrumentation. Let's right click here. Let's go to a new software instrument and let's click this little double arrow, up and down arrow, and we can switch out the instrument here, or we can go click this tab in the top left that's called the library. And basically you can search sounds, or you could just, these are basically presets for you guys. Let's do some presets for now. Let's go to, I'm trying to think what sound will go with this. Maybe some strings. Let's go to studio strings and let's go to some violins, for example. So you can click on this preset. It should load. It may require a download. Anything that requires a download will show this little download arrow thing. All right. So once we have that, we're going to click out of that library tab, go to the inspector tab, this little left right icon here. And then we're going to, here's a pre-built effects chain. Okay, so you don't have to do the effects. We're going to click on the sound. To open up the sound, we're going to click this little slider in the middle to open up the interface. And now if you guys hit Command K, you can play with your typing keyboard. You can even do pitch bends, which is pretty unique. So you can do a lot with the typing keyboard. It's actually shocking how much you could do with that keyboard. You can even modulate, I believe, with this keyboard. Yeah, you can modulate with the other numbers. So 8. Okay, so I rarely use the modulation, but that's cool to know. All right, so anyhow, this sound, let's see how we're gonna fit it in. Turn off my keyboard. So I'm playing, man. It's weird because I got to show you my real workflow, but at the same time show you your workflow in the case you don't have a MIDI controller. So it is a little janky at this point in terms of step by step because I'm using my actual MIDI controller. But But to teach you, let's right click, create a MIDI region here. Now, if I just left click, make this longer, we could double click in here, turn off the inspector here. So let's draw it in. I guess we could draw it in. I'd try to stay away from drawing in stuff in Logic or any DAW at this point. Here are the notes I'm playing. I'm playing D, F, and A. I'm sure there's a way to turn on note labels. Again, I don't know everything about this DAW, y'all. I'm just giving you the sauce that I know. Okay. So here are the notes. The little black dots are the notes. Okay, so let's hit Control because that pencil tool is set to where I hit Control. And let's add this D, F, A. We're going to highlight these. I believe the shortcut is Shift Alt and then the arrows. So I can make these longer by hitting Shift Alt or Option, pardon me, and do left and right like this. That will make it longer. Now we're going to highlight all these notes. Now by default, the velocity or how hard you hit a key is very loud. So it's just going to sound very aggressive and loud. I don't want it to be this loud. So let's turn down what's called the velocity right here. So this changes per whatever note you select. So if I change this note, velocity, if I highlight the one at the bottom, it tells me it's 17. If I highlight this one, it says 83. So this value in the bottom left only talks about the things you have selected. Okay, so I'm going to turn these down to about 17. Very soft. We're going to highlight all these, hit Command R to duplicate. And then we're just going to take this note, hit Option down. It's weird calling Alt Option. I'm just going to call it Alt. Okay, hit Option down or Alt down to transpose this note. All right, so let's say you want more energy in this. What we can do is hit Alt. We can highlight this, just left click to highlight, hit Alt, and then left click and hold Alt. Okay, important to hold it and then let it go. So basically we just duplicated the note. I'm not even sure these violins have samples that low. So this actually does not apply to this instrument. So you're not gonna hear anything in this case because natural violins can't play that low. So let's copy this entire thing. Let's highlight this, hit Command R. Again, these are perfectly timed notes, so we can hit Command R confidently because again, the note perfectly ends. If it were even one smidgen, if that's a word, I don't even know how to micro move this. Oh, change your snap to grid. If you ever have issues trying to move the length of your notes, change your snap to grid to smart mode. And let's say I even made it this small. If I hit Command R, it will latch paste it to the end of this and it will be off set for the rest of the pasting. So you guys got to be careful with this latch paste feature to make sure that it's perfectly on that bar if you are doing that technique. All right, so that's pretty cool. That's really all we need as far as chords. Let's left click and drag this back and then let's highlight this, hit Command R again. So we need some more. So let's call this let's call this the harmony section. When I'm teaching beat making, I like to teach it in 4 components. You have the rhythm section. You have the contrast section, which is your bass or your counter melody. The rhythm is your drums or a synth too, or instruments that keep the timing of the track moving forward. The harmony is your chords for the track. This is your, again, minor chords, major chords, whatever. And then we have what's called the top line. So let's insert a track in here and let's call it the top line. So the top line, so this will help you organize like what is missing from your beat. So in this case, if we were to just use only these elements, we're missing what's called a top line. So the top line is your memorable melody. Let's open up our inspector tool. I'm going to show you a different way. Instead of just relying on the library presets, you might find inspiration just simply building your sound. So we're going to click here. Go to the inspector tab, click this little drop down, and now we can select from all these different plugins that Logic has. And let me click the drop down on the plugin itself. So let's go to Studio Instruments, or we can go to Vintage Keys, or we can go to Synthesizers, or we can go to Sampler. There's a lot of things we could try here. But let's go to Synthesizer and let's go to Retro Synth. This thing is a beast. So just off the bat, if I played chords, just has that, even has aftertouch, which means if you hit your MIDI controller and push it down, it plays differently. It just sounds amazing. Now let's try some presets here. We don't want to do a lead in every single song. Let's try synth brass. Let's try something like this. sounds very West Coast. So let's right click, open this up, MIDI region. Again, I'm going to show you guys how to draw it, even though I played that by hand. Playing by hand gives you more detail because you're creating different velocity changes. What I'll do is I'll show you guys how to draw it in, but then I'm going to record it by hand. Okay, so I'm playing the root note, which is D. So let's hit Command in this case. So I'm down an octave. So let's make this note short though, because now here's the tricky part, is how long did I play the notes? We have to zoom in and kind of guess how long that. So I'm just gonna assume it's 3 of these. It's kind of hard to tell even in real life. Let's do 4 of those. I know this is not a technical video. Okay, so this grid, again, coming from FL Studio, you gotta learn to understand it because it's not the same as FL basically. When you change your snap to grid, it's not gonna change your view of the grid. So you really gotta get used to just it not doing that by default. Again, there may be a way to do it. I just don't know right now. So we're gonna add this note in, the root note. And then remember that pattern, 3-C-O. So 1, 3-C-O. Okay, so let's pull this note back. So again, drawing it in takes a lot more time than just playing it. But again, I assume you guys don't have a MIDI controller. So I'm gonna copy this so we can save time on the timing things. Okay. 3-C-O. And then I forgot what I even played. Okay. Okay, then I went up an octave. So let's highlight this middle note. Hit Shift Option up. That will pull it up an octave. Then octave. So luckily we have this pattern of 3. So when you're stuck with melodies, understand it's called the rule of 3. I teach this in my music theory bundle. Just go to busyworksbeats.com. You can learn more about the music theory bundle. It has all of our music theory courses all in one. So yeah, I teach about this in my melody courses. 3-C-O. It's called the rule of 3. And then I think here I went up a half step, so hit Option up. And here we're gonna do, just gotta get the right time. Man. Gotta get used to double clicking up here to start from this point instead of hitting space, which starts you back from the beginning. I gotta get used to double clicking. So now I just gotta get these last notes lined up. 2, 3, dun, dun. So now I wanna go dun, dun. So now we're gonna go up to what's called the 5th. If we take this note from the root note, count up 7 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is called the 5th. Then we're gonna go to a sharp 5th, which is 1 note above the 5th. Then we're gonna come back to the root note. That took see how like, that took 5 to 10 minutes just doing that part without a MIDI controller. So imagine how much faster you guys would be with a MIDI controller. All right, let's pull this back and let's just drag this. So now I'm going to record it. So if I want to record, I hit the R button right here so that it triggers what's called ARM for recording. So it knows to record to that track. And then I'm going to pick up where I left off basically. So I'm going to hit R on the keyboard or just the big red button at the top here to record my MIDI. All right, so let's hear it back. See all these lines and everything? It shows a different velocity. So this, some are at 100, some are at 105, 109, 121. And the lengths look way different than the lengths we used before. So this is why I said playing by hand. This gives you a little more, not a little more, a lot more detail. So I recommend you guys get a MIDI controller as soon as you can. Okay, so whenever I record by hand, you got to make sure that stuff's lined up. Sometimes you might play a little sloppily and everything feels sloppy. It just depends. So let's double click in here. Let's hit Control A to highlight all of our notes and hit this little Q button, or just hit Q on your keyboard to quantize the notes to this specific quantization. I keep mine on 1/16 by default. And so now it will line those notes up. It just nudges them. So let me hit Control Z so you guys can see. Now this sound itself is a brass sound. So brass takes time. It goes wow like that. If I quantize everything, it will just delay the sound. So sometimes you quantize this stuff. Sometimes you keep it early. That's more advanced to what I'm talking about. But let's hit Q. See if it sounds off. So as you guys can see, it's moving the notes over. So here's before. If I hit Q, here's after. Now if it sounds okay, it sounds good. See how this one just has more feeling to it? I like this one just more. So I'm gonna keep this because it just sounds better, to be honest with you guys. Because that was my intent. So let's double click in here. Let's take out that second dun dun because that wasn't in the original. Okay, now we're done our top line. We have all the ingredients for a song. Now to make this move forward, we can create other layers. Here's where we're getting into more intermediate level beat making. Okay, so the other layers are going to be the same 4 components, but just the expression. So when I speak like this, that is me being theatric and expressive. Like I could be like that, but you know, that's me being extra. So to add that extraness to your beat, we're going to right click, insert a new software instrument, and let's call this top line expression layer. Okay, so the things we could do with these expression layers, for example, the harmony expression layer. This might be a pitch bend in my harmony instead of just playing the chords out or playing the chords in a whole different way. Or, you know, we have the contrast expression. This could be 808 slides. And then we have the rhythm expression, which could be hi-hat rolls, snare rolls, different things like that. So whenever you guys are struggling to move your beat forward, either try changing something about those 4 components or adding these expressive layers. So let's try to add expressive layers. Here's where I'm going to move a little bit quicker because this is all creative at this point. There's no like right or wrong step next. So let's go back to the brass sound and let's just audition some more sounds here. Click on here, go to the inspector tab, go to retro synth, and let's go through some presets here just to see what other sounds we have. Keep in mind this is the top line, the memorable melody. So if it's slow, I like this one. So this sound is more expressive because it has a wow, like it has a vibrato to it. And that's what gives it that expression. So that is a top line expressive sound in this case. Stick with the original. Just a little more dull. Let's go to the top line expression, and here's where I could add bells. You know, there's no wrong sound to add here, but usually the top line is the highest frequency thing of your track. So let's click the drop down. Let's go to Alchemy this time, and let's look for some bells. Now this is like the omnisphere of Logic. There's a lot of organization in here. Let's go to bells, clean, and let's just try some sounds here. Make sure I'm on the right channel here. Now this one I gotta play in by hand, y'all. But again, you guys can play in your notes by hitting Command K. Okay, you can do it that way or just draw it in. So I'm gonna record this in. I'm just playing the root note D, playing the octave, and then playing the 5th. So that's all I'm playing. And this is a rhythmic synth as well, the way I'm playing it. So this is technically a top line and a rhythm expression. right, so I had to think a little bit there. Let's double click, and now let's hit Control A, Q to quantize. You guys will get all the project files. So if I move fast here, this is one of those things where it's me being creative. There's no technical thing to do here. So let's say the notes are just too quantized. I'm going to show you my way. You could technically just left click and move the notes manually, but I feel like that's not ideal. This is intermediate to advanced to understand. So if you're a beginner, do not expect to understand the concept here. We're just going to click on the top line expression layer. In this case, the thing we want to delay, meaning push back in time, because right now it's very stiff. It's like dun 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 dun. It's just right on everything. We want to delay it like we did with the hi-hats, where we nudge the notes over a little bit. So let's go to here where it says top line expression layer. Let's go to audio effects, and let's go to the delay section. Let's go to tape delay, and just follow these instructions here, guys. This is too hard to explain to a beginner. So just turn your wet level all the way up, turn dry level all the way down, turn feedback all the way down, and turn your what's called the delay time all the way down to 0. You have to turn off temp sync for that to be a thing. So turn off tempo sync and turn it all the way down to 0 milliseconds. And then you have to reset this thing here so that the filter is not doing anything, and just double click the clip. Okay, so basically everything is just reset back to nothing. So I'm not going to hear anything. So what we're going to do is use this delay time, and this will basically push the audio to the right. I'm going to exaggerate so you guys can hear. See how there's a time difference now? So I like that bounce. So we're going to pull this back to like 20 milliseconds. And that little time difference adds that groove, okay? Okay, so let's highlight all this, hit Command R. Now remember, the top line expression layer can be something that we add in over time. So if I wanted to arrange this, I could take it out in the beginning and bring it in over time. And this will keep the beat moving without feeling like we're doing something different. Let's go to the harmony expression. Let's find a sound we can add for the harmony here. So I want this to be a little more reverby. So let's go back to the bell top line expression, and we have these things called buses. So by default, most of these are pre-made for you guys. You don't have to think about mixing. But if you ever want to trigger what's called a bus, this is like the effects chain, basically. I don't want to get too deep into mixing right now. Just click on this the knob for it, and it pulls up the chain right next to it in the inspector tab. So here we see this is a reverb bus, and if I click on bus 7, this is also a reverb. But usually this first one is a smaller room. The second one is usually a bigger reverb. So if I want the big reverb sound, I'm just going to turn this bus knob up, basically. So now it's sending a duplicate of the sound over to our reverb, which makes everything feel long and being simple about it. So now I'm just going to crank this up. Now we get that more spacious sound. Now I can just turn the whole sound down. With the channel volume here, I could just turn this whole thing down. But we still have the reverb. So let's say I want to add some more rhythm, like dun, 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 dun. So this is where I'm going to go to the rhythm expression layer, and I'm going to add in more sounds. Let's go to our library here and just go through some sounds. So here's another kind of snare sound. We're just going to left click, add this in. You could do Drum Machine Designer if you plan to add more sounds. And we could just double click here. I'm just going to call it rim, and let's see what else we could add in here, like a laser maybe. Let's add this in. Double click. Let's call this a laser. Laser. Okay, so now we have that laser and a rim. So I'm going to bring those sounds in over time. We're going to double click here and call this rhythm expression, because again, we're adding to the rhythm. Okay, and now we can right click Actually, we can go to, let's go to the edit tool with this pencil tool, go to step sequencer, and then we could draw it in using this. Now let's right click and let's create a pattern here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's turn the well, I guess we don't need the metronome with the hi-hat. So we're gonna watch this little playthrough icon. That's it. So let's go boom, boom, dun, ta, ta. Now keep in mind, let's make the 64 steps so it doesn't just repeat over and over. And I'm gonna add a couple laser sounds at the end. Again, this is subjective. This is not a mandatory step. So I'm just gonna take some of the stuff out so it doesn't repeat all the time. Use left click to take it out. And because it's perfectly lined up, we could just hit Command R to copy and paste. Now I have a lot of windows open, so let's close these windows. So I think what'll make this beat knock a little bit is if we add that same delay over to our 808. Let's add a delay to the 808. Same thing, we want to take off tempo sync, turn it all the way down, turn off the clip threshold, turn this down, turn this. This gets a little quirky sometimes, so you got to be careful with this. Turn this feedback to 0, turn the wet level all the way up to 100, turn the dry level down. So basically we're only hearing the delay. And I turned everything off. So all we're hearing is what we change. So what we're going to change is this delay time. I like to work in increments of 4 when it comes to things like drums. So 4 milliseconds is what we have it set to. So we're delaying that kick, the 808. Let's do it in increments of 4. Sometimes just delaying that 808, we'll put it in a nice pocket. So I'm going to do 4 milliseconds for now, but we could always change that. Okay, let's hear what we have so far. I feel like this brass could use more reverb, so let's click on the brass, the top line, and left click the bus to send it to that reverb channel. I'm also going to do the small reverb one on the other bus, so it's a little bit bigger of a sound. Now here's where I usually start mixing on what's called the stereo bus. So if you click on your tracks, you should see the stereo out, unless you have, you know, like you clicked on a bus icon for some reason. So let me show you guys. There's so much to teach in this one video. So I'm going to keep the mixing to a very safe level so we don't get too off into the weeds. But before we do that, actually, let's add a harmony expression sound. So let's click our drop down here and let's go to, let's do maybe a sampler this time. And let's try the quick, let's do the multi-sample sampler. Okay, click the drop down and let's just try some sounds here like guitars. They have keyboards in here. They have world sounds. Let's try some world sounds, maybe from Asia. Let's do it like a flute or something. Okay, I got to download these real quick. Okay, the download was quicker than I expected. So here's a flute sound. So here with the top line expression layer, I'm going to do more pitch bends and things like that. Let's call this a top line expression because now I'm doing this more as a top line. We get a multiple top line expression layers once you understand harmony. So I'm using more pitch bends. Okay, to do a pitch bend without a MIDI controller, hit Command K and use the 1 and 2. So my favorite thing to do is pitch down first, then play a key and let go of the pitch bend. So it goes like that. So pitch down first, hit a key, let go of the pitch down. So that's how I'm doing these like glissant, these slide effects. Let's record this in. Pretty hard. This is coming out pretty dope. So I kind of like that dry sound, but if we wanted more reverb, we would click on this again, click on the bus to send it to the reverb more. I'll show you guys how to get a more aggressive sound, but I'm gonna wait to mix the drums. So let's say that dun 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 is a little playful for this because now it's getting more into an ethnic sound. I'm going to show you guys a couple plugins I love. So click on where it says top line expression. In this case, we'll label these. This is more of a bell. Let's label this bell and label this one flute so that we know the difference there. So this is more of a classical top line. If I had to label a top line, this is more of a top line. This is more of a contrast layer. So now I'm starting to re-rank these sounds. So let's re-rank these because technically this is really a stronger top line. Okay, and this is more of an expression layer. So now we have it more ranked properly. Now with the top line here, with the bell sound, we can click on it. And my favorite plugin here, you have to add a plugin, you have to click this little area just underneath your other audio plugins to add a plugin. We're gonna go to where it says multi-effects. Let's try the Beat Breaker. And this is a really dope plugin for all things glitchy. So let's add that in. We can do halftime. And we can blend it in with the mix level. So now we have the doom, we have the regular one, and then we have the slowed down one. I'll exaggerate this so you guys can hear. So here's off. And when we bring in what's called the halftime effect, turn the mix level up. We're adding in a whole different layer, and then we can go to the note repeat to really get kind of glitchy here. You could also mess with the volume too. So what we could do to arrange this is get rid of this. Okay, so like get rid of stuff. So now I'm just naming stuff for you. See how the beat feels like it has movement now? It has movement because we're taking away things and bringing things back in. I'm going to keep this simple. Let's just move to the mixing part because this video could take a while to kind of get into every little detail I would add to it. Let's go to the audio effects here. And to make it really hit, I like the distortion. This doesn't work for every song though, so just be careful with this. Under distortion, it's called overdrive. I like to mess with this one and mess with the tone knob. Gives you that kind of crunchy sound. Now, depending on how hard your 808 is already, this could be just too much for your 808. So this one is going back. It's just doing too much on the 808. So instead of that one, we could also use the distortion 2. That's a good one too. But as you guys can hear, it's very bitey on my voice. What most people don't know is there's a drop down here for the mix level. So click the drop down and then mess with the mix level. So this is going to add that grit to your track. You guys can hear it in my voice. That's basically what we're adding. Let's add the EQ here, the channel EQ. I'm going to turn that first plugin off just for a second. And let's add the channel EQ. I like to boost the low shelves in general. This usually adds the density I need for the beat. Just boosting it just like, what is this, 1 dB. And then we're going to boost the whole channel volume up about 3 or dB or so. This is going to add that distortive sound. So when people say FL knocks, you can make a Logic knock too. Whole thing is just the 808. We don't want it to overly distort. So the whole thing is like listening for that 808 to not sound like it's going. We want it to be like boom, boom, boom. And right now, if we push it too hard, it goes. And then nextly, you could add that compressor under dynamics. Go to compressor. Optional. You don't always have to do this, but we're going to turn the threshold up, turn the ratio to 1.1, turn off the auto gain here, and then mess with these distortion modes here. Even in my voice, you guys could hear it adds like a crunch to my voice. It depends on your mix. Not every mix needs this though. I'm not sure if the effect compressor gives you more harmonics. I think it does, but I can't tell. It's hard to tell. I think that's when you use the actual compressor. So again, we're not using this for compression, but the distortion on it. And also too, this has a mix level. So if you feel like it's just doing too much, you can pull this down. Let's add that distortion back. So don't be afraid to turn up the volume. See how it's knocking now? Let's add a limiter. Let's add a limiter is the last thing. Now the limiter should not be doing a lot. I'm not going to get into mixing right now. This is too much to explain. Let's go to dynamics limiter. And again, you guys will get the project files for free. So our goal is to the limiter should barely take out 2 dB at the max. I forgot to mention one plugin here. So let's click this thing again. Let's go to where it says imaging. Let's go to direction mixer. And let's put this on split mode. So basically, now this is kind of weird because I hear it in my voice. Check, check. Can't tell if it's just the delay or what. But this does add, maybe it's my brain. Okay, check, 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 check. Anyway, what I'm going to do in this is anything below 200 hertz, which is your bass and your kicks, we're going to pull this down so that it's more centered. Okay, so don't think of it as full mono. It's just more, instead of everything being like this, it's going to pull it in like this. And we're going to leave everything else normal. Okay, so it's going to make the instrument sound wider and reverb sound bigger. This does not apply to every single song though. Or my brain just thought of I want to record in like this little toot 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 in the 808. So for this, I'm just going to record a new track. We're just going to right click, create a duplicate track here, because I don't want to go in and have to deal with all these little patterns here, regions. Okay, I'm just going to record a new 808, and I know it's not going to overlap. All right, so let's add that in. Let's record this in as if it's a percussive sound. Doot, doot, doot. Adding a little extra bounce. Let's double click in here, hit Control A. My bad, I almost hit Control Q, not the right one. Hit Control A, then Q. So it should be doot, doot, doot. And then we could turn this down to treat it like a sub, like below, I should say, not like sub frequencies. Like a secondary 808. 1, 2. And just turn down the volume so it's not seen as the main 808. If I were arranging this for real, let's duplicate this over. And I would usually take out the 808 for the first beginning of the track. You want to surprise the listener with the 808 and the kick drum. So the 808 is the kick drum in this instance. So, okay, and now we're getting into the advanced stuff. So I wanted to go like that, but I don't want it to be like an obvious delay. So I'm going to go back to the tape delay here. We're going to add what's called the feedback time and then add in a dry signal. So we're going to hear the original and then just copy these settings. We're going to turn up the spread. Let me turn this distortion off. We're going to turn up the spread so it goes do, do, do like that with the delay. And we have to set the time. So let's hear what it sounds like so far. This is, again, an advanced sound design. So it goes like that. And let's just change the time to like 20 or 30 milliseconds. So now seeing more as a tom drum than an 808. I like the sound. Let's get a little sloppier. Let's up the time here. Try 45 milliseconds. I just like that sound. It just sounds cool with that sloppy delay there. Okay, now let's see what we have for this entire track. So that's the type of ear candy you guys will learn over time. All right, so what I'm messing with right now is called the expander. You guys don't need to know what the heck this is. This is for like the smallest little thing. I'm just trying to trigger a transient. You don't need to know what this does. I'll just do it for you guys. Basically, I'm just adding more dynamic. This one's a little hard to manage because you have to think backwards on this one. So this is a part of the song where it might be a little repetitive to keep playing that flute. So here's where I would use my backup sound, my top line expression sound, to fill in for the fact that the top line's getting a little repetitive. This may or may not fill in the gap, but let's just see. So that sounds pretty dope. Let's copy this over, and let's say we want that kind of slowed down effect, but for the top line as well. So this is where, again, there's probably a faster, more like the way to go about this. We're going to go to the top line, the flute, and this is my last thing for today. I don't want to cover too much stuff. We're going to click here. We're going to go to the multi effects, go to the beat breaker effect, and again, go to halftime. It's already preset for you. And basically this mix level, we should be able to automate over time. So firstly, let's just set it to 0 to start. And let's say I want to bring it in over time. Let's click this automations little node thing up here. We have to switch the drop down here where it says volume, switch this to the plugin that we want to trigger, and then the thing that we can automate, in this case, the mix level for the beat break effect. So let's click here on beat break mix, and then we want to go click drop down and go to touch. I found that touch is a little bit easier, and I'm just going to turn this fader thing up to like 100%. So there's a line drawn. So basically in the beginning, I could left click and turn it off, and I could create another node by double clicking here. So it's similar to FL. So it's kind of drawing in where you want the values to kind of pick up or drop out over time. So let's bring in this effect over time. Let's kind of fade it in like this. Again, I'm sure there's more buttons to know. Like, okay, so let's go here, and then let me see if snap to grid. I guess that doesn't do much. Okay, boom, and then we're going to double click and then make it back to, we're going to change it back to 0 because we don't want the effect to turn back on after that specific point. So it should turn on over time right at this point. Let's hear what that sounds like. And I'll show you guys the mix value right here is going up. This is correlating with that line we just created. And now we can hear that the effect is just creeping up to 100% over time. All right, so that's a cool way to create changes, especially in trap music, without doing too much like adding notes. So let's hear what we have all the way through. guys, you just made your first trap banger in Logic Pro. So if you want these project files for free, go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory and to get these project files for free. I want to thank everybody for watching this. I didn't realize it was an hour long, so share with a friend who's trying to learn Logic Pro. Have faith that FL Studio users can use Logic Pro. It is very usable and it's fun. It's really fun. All right, guys, subscribe if you're new. Peace.